بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Can you see my screen?
Yes, man.
Okay, good. So inshallah, we're going to continue with learning about the different sects in Islam. And today, inshallah, we're going to learn about Alashariya and Almaaturiidiya. Like I told you, inshallah, it's good for you to learn this because then you will know what to avoid when it comes to miscorrect understanding of the Quran and Sunnah and incorrect Aqidah. And somehow, or most likely, you've come across these sects, but through their books. It's kind of fed to you through their books, through the Islamic studies material that even people study at the madrasas. But you would not know it unless you studied the Aqidah, or someone who studied the Aqidah would know. So also, we're not saying that these groups are kafir. We will come across some groups who fall into kufr and disbelief, but these groups, they're Muslim, especially these two groups, are the closest to the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. But again, there's differences when it comes to belief in Allah's attributes. So Allah's attributes has become a place of dispute, and a point that a lot of people, or the Muslims, have differed on. And at the end of the day, is you have to believe regarding Allah what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said we should believe regarding him, and the Quran. So this group we have today is Alashariya and Almaaturiidiya, and they exist today. And you would even come across them like in UK. You probably even studied at their madrasas without even knowing, especially Maturidiyya. So if we look at the Asha'ira, who are they? Also, there's a big debate, especially amongst the Somali community these days, especially in Hargeisa, regarding the Ash'ariya. And there's one sheikh who said that why is the Ash'ari Aqidah being taught in Hargeisa, and then the Asha'ira responded, and they made claims of basically their Aqidah being according to the Quran and Sunnah and all of that. But you're going to learn about them now today, inshallah. The founder is Imam Abu al-Hasan Ali ibn Ismail al-Ash'ari. He was born in Basra in Iraq, 260 AH. He lived in Baghdad, and he died in 324. He was brought up by his stepfather. But his stepfather was a sheikh of the Mu'tazila. So this group was like an offshoot of the Mu'tazila, although it is said that they actually debated with Mu'tazila using the logic they were using to prove a lot of what the correct Aqidah, but they also limited their understanding, and they made some mistakes. So if you look at the Sheikh, he grows up with the Mu'tazila, brought up by the Mu'tazila. But then he goes back to the correct Aqidah. He said when he reached the age of 40, he went back to the correct Aqidah and belief. So he denounced the Mu'tazila doctrine when, after finding out there's a lot of contradictions and that they were diverging from the Sunnah. And so they said that first he went to another group called Kallabiya, close to the Ahl Sunnah. And in his book, he says that he's left all of that and he's on a book called Ibana. He said he's upon the doctrine of the Aqidah, the belief of Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Remember we talked about Ahmad ibn Hanbal and how he was the Imam of Hadith, and he also had a madhab was made on his ideas. But it seems like it was said that when Abu Musa Abu al-Hasan, when he came across the hadiths and he read into it and read the book of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he understood that this was the correct way. Okay, also many who are like him, they were kind of regretted learning philosophy. Remember we said the Mu'tazila were using philosophy. This group as well, they were influenced by using philosophy and logic. So one of them, Abu A'la al-Juwayni, he says that when he was on his deathbed, he said, bear witness that I retracted every statement that contradicted Sunnah, because he was the Imam, people were following him. And he said, I want to die upon the Iman of the women of Naysapur, okay, in Persia. So he said, I just want to die like those old women. I want to be on their aqidah. Just simple, straightforward. Listen to what Allah in the Quran says. Listen to Quran and Sunnah and just follow it simply without using too much logic and trying to be. So he says, I want to die like that. Also, another Sheikh, Fakhruddin al-Razi, was also from the Mu'tazila. He said, I wish I had not engaged in philosophy. And he wept because that misled him. And he was feeling guilty. So a lot of them, they repented from using this logic. Because imagine if you try to use, oh, that's what they did, logic to understand qadr, logic and philosophy to understand, for example, Allah's attributes, it's not going to make sense because you can't imagine it. You can't imagine, it's beyond our comprehension. So anyway, he even like how he was and how he practiced his aqidah that he was on before he came back to Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah was not like how people are practicing it now. So some of them said if he was to see how they are now, he will disown them. So he used to tell them that I disown myself for what they say. So basically, even they changed what the ideas he had. He was closer to Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So basically, when it comes to qadar, are you with me?
Yes,
Are you with me? Okay. So when it comes to qadar, we're talking about the current Ash'ariyah. They're like, when it comes to predestination, they're like the Jibreel. They say like you are forced to do basically what Allah has recorded for you. You don't have a will. When it comes to the Aqidah, Iman, they're like Murji'ah. Remember we said Murji'ah are those who think that wherever any sin you do, it doesn't affect your Iman. So this is how they were when it comes to, it was kind of a mix of different groups, the new Ash'ariyah now. And also they're Mu'attila, they reject all Allah's names and attributes. Okay, Allah's attributes except 7. And they said we can accept these 7 because the logic shows that you should accept them. So they're using logic to say we accept this and we reject this. One of them is, I need to change this wording, it shouldn't be establishment, shouldn't be establishment, is they deny. So they deny that Allah of the throne. Remember, if you say that He is established of the throne, that's what they believe. They deny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above the throne. Remember, what do Hindus kind of believe? They believe in like something called wahdatul wujud, and this is how they were influenced because a lot of them, they believe that you can't pinpoint Allah. Okay, you can't say we believe that because Allah said He's above the heavens and above the throne, so we can actually say the direction Allah is. We can't pinpoint it, but we can say the direction. And this is the problem. They're not going to say that. So they would say He's neither inside the world nor outside the world, nor above it, nor below. They won't give you a direction. But the Quran Sunnah tells us that Allah is above the throne. Okay, this is a problem. They would say, some of them say, we're going to see that Allah is everywhere, and that's wrong. Okay, the 7 attributes that they believe in are power, will, knowledge, life, speech, hearing, and sight. Okay, so you will even see in, I don't know if you see, like, for example, some books, when they talk about, especially book 1 or book 2 for the children, Islamic studies books, they start with like Allah is all hearing, Allah's seeing, which is fine, but for them it's like they're not even talking about some things that they should be talking about. They probably would limit Allah's attributes just to that. Even when they get to higher books, they won't break it up. Okay, so this is what they believe in. They won't talk about Allah being above the throne, that we have to believe Allah has a face and hands and He said it, so we have to believe in it. Okay, so they also believe in reason over transmission. So for them it's logic, then the Quran and Sunnah. So for example, if it doesn't make sense to them, then they're not going to accept it. It has to be logic first. Also, they've restricted the Iman to what's in the heart. So if a person, for example, doesn't even say La ilaha illallah, for them is still a Muslim. If he doesn't act with his limbs, he doesn't pray Salah, he's still a Muslim. And it's not going to affect. So this is a big problem as well. It's a big problem because we know that a person can leave Islam if he is not acting upon it, especially like Salah and things like that. So that's the Asha'ira. And the difference between the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya is that the Maturidiyya are Hanafi. They're like we're going to see that they spread into a place where it's practiced by the Hanafi madhab, and the Asha'ira follow the Shafi'i madhab, school of thought. So Maturidiyya was made by Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, whose name was Muhammad ibn Mahmud al-Maturidi in Samarkand. So he was born there, and he also was using a lot of logic, very similar to Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. So they were very similar. The only difference is one was in Iraq and the other one was in Persia. So this Maturidi Aqidah, it became popular and it spread out through the Ottoman Empire. So it expanded into, because the Ottoman Empire, they adopted it, so it expanded into Arabia, Persia, India, Turkey, also Rome. Yeah. And they also very similarly, they only accept like 7 attributes of Allah, which is life, power, knowledge, will, hearing, sight, speech, and creation, taqween. So the thing was, when Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, he kind of defended, the Ahlul Sunnah. He basically debated with the Mu'tazila. They beat them in the debate, but they were still left with a limited understanding where they didn't accept all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes. So they've divided like the religion into intellectuals or aqliyat, things you can understand with the mind, okay, and also into sam'iyat, things that you can't understand with the mind, like the grave punishment of the grave and things like that. So they actually made so they made these divisions that are unnecessary. But the point is their understanding of Tawheed, it was kind of limited because they were just focusing on that Allah is the creator and that Allah, He invents things and He creates things from nothing. So a lot of some Islamic studies books, they just focus on that. It's focusing on like that Allah is the one who created everything and invented it, and that's it. They don't really go to the main point, which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Tawheed is actually to worship Him alone and not to associate partners with Him. So that is basically the problem with the Asha'ira and Maturidiyya. The biggest difference with the Ahlul Sunnah, so they're still Muslims, they're still from the Muslims, from the Muslim community, but who is closer to the Sunnah. So like, for example, people who are following the Sunnah, the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, is people who are actually practicing what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam practiced and believed in. Okay, in terms of Iman, in terms of Allah's names and attributes. And this is where they've kind of become misled. So this is what you need to, inshallah, know really about. And that basically even their own Imam kind of returned from this. And the fact that the most important point is that you have to believe that Allah is above His throne. So Allah, if He says He's got hands, then we believe He's got hands, but not like the human beings or the creation. If Allah says He's got eyes, then we say Allah has eyes, but not like the creation. Okay. So this is the correct aqidah. We accept, and we don't compare Allah to His creation. So if Allah says He has an attribute, you can't deny it, because then if you deny it, you're denying something in the Quran just because of your logic. Okay, so for example, one of the big debates, if you were just to ask someone where is Allah, even a lot of my students, if you ask them now where's Allah, they would say everywhere. So where did this come from? It just is mentioned in the books, Islamist books, without person thinking about what is the correct aqidah and what does it say in the Quran and Sunnah. Wallahu alam. Any questions on this?